Hey guys, bringing you a battle report today. I apologise for the sound quality. I'm having to record this on my built-in microphone on the laptop. So if I sound a little far away, that's why. I'll try and make sure it doesn't pick up any background interference. Bringing you a battle report today. We have some Tyranids, as you can see in the picture. There's a picture of the armor I was using. I used it as sort of the cover picture for now. And I was playing against some Space Marines with Space Wolf allies. Now, the mission we rolled for was Purge of the Alien, and we had the Hammer and Anvil deployment zones, which is the short table edges, going long ways. So it was set up kind of a disadvantage for me because I don't like going a long way. My opponents can sit deep in the deployment zone and make it hard for me to get my Tyranids into combat. But we'll see how the game goes as it develops. So we rolled for our Warlord traits. I rolled for the Hive Tyrant. He's my only HQ option, so I had to roll for the Hive Tyrant. I rolled on personal traits, and I rolled Legendary Fighter, which is the kill points for every character he kills in a challenge, which is fantastic for me, and fantastic considering we are playing as the kill points-esque mission. So my opponent, Simon, he rolled for his librarian, his Space Marine librarian, and he rolled Master of Offense, which gave him Furious Charge in my deployment zone, which could come in handy later on in the battle. So then we rolled for Psychic Powers. Simon decided to keep all these basic Psychic Powers. We'll go through his army in just a second. I think I can remember pretty much what he had. But I rolled on the Biomancy on both my Hive Tyrant and the Turbigon. The Hive Tyrant managed to roll Endurance and Hemorrhage. Hemorrhage is pretty rubbish, but Endurance is good. I would have liked to get Iron Arm or Warp Speed, but unfortunately, it's the roll of the dice. But Endurance is a good power. And unfortunately, my Turbigon rolled Life Leech and Enfeeble, which really aren't that good. And as you see later in the battle, they never came into fruition and changed anything. So then we started setting up for sort of deployment things. We rolled for night fighting, and it was night fighting turn 1. So a quick run through of the army. You see, you've been looking at my 200 army there for a while now. You've probably distinguished what's in it. We have, closest in the picture, we have 2 Trigons. In between those, there is a winged Hive Tyrant. The Hive Tyrant has 2 sets of Trilink Devourers and Toxin Sacks. The 2 Trigons also have Toxin Sacks. That giant white thing, sorry about the unpainted model there guys, it's sort of one of the few things I have left to do, is a Turbigon with loads and loads of upgrades. It has Crushing Claws, Adrenal Glands, Toxin Sacks, the extra power. Really is sort of a major expense in the army, but he's really good. Then looking sort of top left-ish of the picture, we have the Doom of Malantai in his Mycetic Export, which is that egg-looking thing, which again needs painting. I apologise. Just below those, there's 3 Hive Guard. One of them's hiding behind the Hive Tyrant's wing. And then in the centre of the picture, and off to the centre right, there is 2 units of 10 Termagants, just to make up the troops allowance and to make the Turbigon a scoring unit also. And then top right, just in front of those trees, there's a unit of 10 Yungal Gene Stealers. Now that was my 1500 point army for this game. And we'll move on to the next picture now. We'll look at Simon's army. He was using Space Marines with Space Wolf allies. Now the first thing you'll probably notice about his army there is the fact that he has 4 Vindicators. Yes, 4 Vindicators was not going to fare me very well in this game. Obviously Vindicators are a nasty thing to have to face against you, and I was facing 4. Now behind those 4 Vindicators we have 4 Rhinos. The 2 in the centre, I believe one had some plasma gun wielding Stern Guard in there. There was 3 combi plasma and 2 plasma guns, and the librarian, the Space Marine librarian, was riding in that Rhino with the plasma Stern Guards. In the centre on the left, I think we have a unit of 8 Grey Hunters from his Space Wolf allies, and riding them was the Space Wolf Rune Priest, was riding in that unit. They all had the close combat weapons. I don't think they had any upgrades, just standard Grey Hunters. I can't remember. I didn't write down a copy of his arm list, I'm afraid, guys. And then the 2 Rhinos on the very far left and the very far right were identical squads of 10 Tactical Marines with a multi-melter, a melter gun, and a sergeant with a combi melter. So lots and lots of melter in his units. So skipping on to the next picture there, we have a picture of the table we're playing on. For those that are wondering, this is a game we played at Warhammer World in Nottingham. We are lucky enough to have it as our local store. So this was the table in the main gaming hall. As you see that I won the roll off for deployment and decided to deploy first and go first. So as you can see, I've lined up there. The 2 Trigons were as central as possible. The Hive Guard segmenting them in between. The Hive Tyrant also central but off to one side. He has his ability to swoop, so the position of deployment doesn't matter too much because he's so maneuverable. He can reposition anywhere he likes. And Demon Valentine was in reserve. The Youngard Gene Stealers were in reserve. They have their dormant special rule, which means I pick a piece of terrain, and I picked the trees that were in the middle of the picture now, closest to the bottom middle. I picked the trees. Now the reason why I picked those trees was simply because I took a gamble, thinking if I pick the trees that are, or the building that's in his deployment zone, and he rushes forward towards me, they're going to pop out and have nothing to assault. Whereas if he comes forward, I can jump the young girls out and sort of counter assault and stem his assault down one flank. So we'll see how that works out later on in the battle, guys. And where the Hive Tyrant stood, the red building behind him, behind that building, again to the right off picture, I deployed the Tervigon and the 2 units of 10 gaunts right back out of the way of Vindicators. We were playing Purge of the Alien, there was no objectives for them to grab, so the idea was just to keep them alive, so I deployed them very far back. And as you can see in this picture, you see Simon starting to deploy his Vindicators there in the top left. So moving on to the next picture, this is after he'd finished his deployment. He'd gone for the big long line of tanks. Right at the top of the picture there, we have the Rhino with the Space Marine Librarian and the Plasma Stern Guards in. Then we have a Vindicator, another Vindicator, the patch of trees there, the 2 units of 10 Tactical Marines are right in the middle there, and those 2 Rhinos. Deployed with another Vindicator, and then another red metallic building. We're treating all the buildings as ruins, line of sight blocking where applicable. So behind that building we have the Rune Priest and the Grey Hunters deployed in that Rhino. Excuse me, guys. And then we have the final Vindicator there at the bottom of the picture. So I started turn 1. Simon failed to seize the initiative, and I started moving. So moving on to the next picture, see the Hive Tyrant here has flown up full 24 inches and landed right in front of the Rhino cluster in the centre. The rest of my army just kind of moved up. I did have a picture of this, but for some reason, some of the pictures I took during this battle report have been corrupted for some reason. So I did take a picture on movement phase, the other stuff moving up. Unfortunately, I lost that picture, so if there's bits missing here and there, guys, I apologise. So the Hive Tyrant flew up. He fired his 12 shots, Twin Devourers into one of the Rhinos, managed to strip all its hull points down, didn't explode it. Guys bundled out out the back, passed the pinning test, and they were fine. The second Rhino next to it was also wrecked by the Hive Guard, moved up behind the big green building that was in the centre of the board, fired their Impaler cannons over the top, obviously ignoring cover saves, and managed to wreck that Rhino also, didn't explode it, and the Marines powered out that one and passed their pinning test again. So we move on to the next picture. Again, we can see the sort of remnants of my movement phase, excuse me, guys. You see the Trigons have moved up. They've split up. One's gone to the left, one's gone to the right. The Hive Guard moved up behind that building, and then this is the end of Simon's movement phase, where he has moved his Vindicators around the flanks, getting a pincer movement going on. The Grey Hunters have shot down that side. The Plasma gun wielding stern guard at the top of the picture there. I've moved up in the Rhino, disembarked 6 inches, and tactical marines in the centre. I've just shuffled around the Rhino wreckage, repositioned to get some shots off going. So we're moving to the shooting phase, Space Marine shooting phase. The plasma gun wielding stern guards managed to take off 4 wounds from the Trigon. One overheat, I managed to kill himself unfortunately, but did take 4 wounds from the Trigon. The Vindicator, one of them scattered off horribly and missed, and the other Vindicator fires, took out a Hive Guard and put a wound on another one, hit all 3, wounded all 3. I had no cover saves and just lost a Hive Guard. Then the tactical squad in the centre finished off the remaining Trigon. Long range shooting, managed to have a melter gun in range. The multi-melter didn't move. Bolter guns just took its 2 remaining wounds off. I think both melters hit and both melters wounded, so you didn't even need to fire the bolters. They hit that. The other tactical squad, I believe they fired. The other tactical squad fired into the flying Hive Tyrant. So if you look close in the picture there, there's 2 tactical squads. The one that's slightly higher than the one fired at the Trigon and finished it off, and the one that's just close to that red building there fired at the Hive Tyrant, but he passed his grounding test and didn't inflict any wounds, which is lucky for me. And then moving on to the next picture, you can just see there the Trigon has suffered 4 wounds from the plasma gun wielding stern guard, and then he promptly died. So moving on to the next picture, there is just a summary of the turn. The Vindicator on the right flank moved flat out, followed by the Rhino with the Grey Hunters in. Also went flat out down that right flank. So moving on to the next picture now. Both my reserves turned up. The Young Girls jumped out of that forest there in the centre, which turned out to be a really good gamble because now they have a nice plethora of targets. So I moved them out here to possibly get some multi-assaults going if needs be. I moved the Trigon up through the forest. The forest turned out to be nothing of note, so it didn't affect the battle. The Hive Guard also moved round to this right hand side. I could see him really trying to push forward on this side, and I didn't want that to happen, so I've swung around my force this way to stem this forward push. Moving on to the next picture. You see there in the bottom of the picture, the Duvamantai also turned up and his pod landed bang on target. I aimed for the Rhino wreckage, took a danger train test, didn't fail it, so we're fine there. Duvamantai jumps out, also didn't take the danger terrain test, so it's all good there in the centre. He's ready to start sucking some brains in the shooting phase. The Hive Tyrant cast endurance on himself again. He did so in the first round, I forgot to say that. He cast endurance on himself. Then he moved, he's got his 90-degree pivot. He went about 45 degrees, flew forward about 18 inches and landed just behind that Vindicator to get some nice rear armor shots going with his 12 shots. So on to the shooting phase. The Duvamantai obviously was in his 6-inch range of 2 tactical squads. The first one rolled a 4 for leadership, and the other squad rolled a 13, suffered 4 casualties. The Hive Tyrant shot his 12 shots into the rear arm of that Vindicator and managed to completely wreck it. I knew this was going to happen. 12 shots, strength 6 in his rear armor, he was going to be dead. The Duvamantai tried to cast Cataclysm and failed his psychic power. Didn't perils, he rolled an 11, so at least he didn't take a wound off himself, but he would have been strength 8, could have got a nice pie plate on one of the tactical squads, but didn't, so it doesn't matter. Excuse me, guys. So then that was the shooting phase. Not a lot happened. The Spore also fired in tactical marines, but did no wounds. Moving on to the next picture, we can see here this is the assault phase. Where the Trigon is stood there, the crater was the Vindicator. The Hive Guard blew that up in the shooting phase. Got some nice side armor shots and managed to explode it. I think I only got 1 penetrating hit and rolled a 6. 1 glance, 1 pen, rolled a 6, blew it up. Lucky for me. So onto the assault phase. The Trigon there has assaulted the Rhino, and the young Gene Stealers have assaulted the Vindicator. So moving on to the next picture, you can see how that's resolved. Unsurprisingly, the Trigon chose to smash, so we've had 4 hits, hitting on 3s with rerolls, and then auto pens, so you've got 4 penetrating hits, blew it up, exploded, I think killed one of the guys inside, they weren't pinned, didn't wound himself, and the young Gene Stealers also managed to wreck that Vindicator. Luckily for me, it didn't explode, because that would have obviously risked killing some of the Gene Stealers themselves, but it was just a wreck. So this swinging my force this way has completely halted the Space Wolves contingent's advance down this right flank, so it's looking a lot more comfortable for me down this side. And the current kill point total was standing at 7-1 to myself. I had first blood at this point, and I had killed several of his units, whereas I had only lost a Trigon. So moving on to the next picture, we can see here this is a summary of my turn and the Space Marine movement phase. He's moved up his Plasma Stern Guards around the building in the centre to get some shots off at the Hive Guard. No cover saves there, so if they are in range and hit, then I'm going to be suffering casualties. He moved around his tactical squads, stayed still to try and... Now, I advised him he should really move because of the Hive Guard being... because of the Doom of Malantai being within 6 inch range, but he really wanted to get some shots off at the Trigon and at the Hive Tyrant. The Vindicators move around, the one on the left of the picture there, to try and land a template on the young Gene Stealers. And the Grey Hunters and the Space Wolf Rune Priest moved down the right flank again past the Trigon in a hope of casting Jaws of the World Wolf at my Trigon, which you could just see behind that building there in the top right hand corner if you see. So moving on to the next picture, we can see here the tactical squads that were in the centre. Again, the one that's remaining there rolled like a 3 for the leadership test. They just refused to fail. But the other unit was going to aim their melters at the Doom of Malantai, but they rolled a 15 for the leadership test and killed the remaining 6. And this is really why I love the Doom of Malantai. He's up to 10 now. A squad could have fired 3 melter guns out in this turn, but he just completely evaporated them all with his brain suck ability. So the other tactical squad also fired at the Doom of Malantai, rolled 2 hits with melter guns, and he rolled snake eyes to wound. So they look really going against Simon here at this point of the game. It's really tough for him there. And also the Vindicator fired at the Doom of Malantai. Managed to hit him, and he managed to wound him, but the Doom of Malantai passed his invulnerable save to keep himself alive. It would have instant killed the Doom of Malantai there, but he did also hit the Doom of Malantai Spore Pod, which is only toughness 4, doesn't have a save, and he failed the cover save and died. In fact, no, he didn't even get a cover save because he wasn't in area terrain, so he just completely got obliterated by a Vindicator shell. And I think we see just off picture there at the top, I think they're just in the picture, the Plasma Gun veterans had line of sight, had range, and fired at the Hive Guard behind that green building and managed to finish them all off. So my Hive Guard are now dead and the Spore's dead. So he's making some returns on points at this point in the game. And also moving on to the Rune Priest, next picture, you can see here behind that building there is no longer a Tervigon hiding there. The Rune Priest managed to cast Jaws of the World Wolf, just about got in range of the Tervigon, and I couldn't roll that one, and the Tervigon just disappeared, sucked into a hole. Jaws of the World Wolf is so deadly against the Tervigon, and as expected, he was sucked into a hole, and the shockwave he has against Gaunts took the lives of 7 Gaunts. You can see in the picture there, that is what is left. It's still Unit 10 Gaunts unaffected there, but there's the Unit 3 Gaunts left from the 10. Absolute devastation at the back ranks there. You know, they were previously just doing nothing, had no impact on the game whatsoever, and now they're just completely dead. Tervigon's gone. So moving on to the next picture, this is turn 3, the end of the movement phase. As you can see, the Hive Tyrant has turned around. He's no longer flying. He's gone into glide mode, and he's ready to engage that Vindicator, take out the last of his Vindicators to be really good at this point in the game. Duomalantai just stayed where he was. He's still in range to suck the brains of that tactical squad and to fire his blast template at the stern guards in the top of the picture there. And the young Gene Stealers just move around the wreckage of that Vindicator to assault the tactical marines should they still be alive. Moving on to the next picture, the Trigon has moved to engage the Grey Hunters, trying to move down the right flank. So in the shooting phase, the Duomalantai failed again to do anything to that tactical squad with his brain suck ability, but he was still at strength 10. And this turn he did manage to cast his large blast template, fired it at the plasma sterns in the top of the picture, top of the previous picture, and killed all of them and took a whole point off the Rhino, but couldn't manage to wreck it. The Hive Tyrant cast Endurance onto the young Gene Stealers to give them feel no pain, which would have helped them because they were going to charge. As you see here in the picture, they charged into the tactical squad in the centre. The Trigon did in fact charge the Priest and his unit and killed all of the Grey Hunters except from the Priest. He failed his instinctive behaviour test, which gave him rage, which meant he had an additional attack on the charge. He was charging him with 8 attacks, rerolling to hit, rerolling to wound. He just ate the entire squad, all but the Priest was left. So I was really looking up for me on that flank of the board there. The Hive Tyrant shot in all 12 shots into the sidearm of the Vindicator and of course wrecked it again. So he's claimed, he's personally claimed most of Simon's Vindicators himself. And the Young squad declared a charge against the tactical squad in the centre. They took +1 toughness to help against the Overwatch fire. I think the Overwatch fire killed one. I'm not too sure. I think looking at the picture there, there's still 10. So they managed to get into. They took toughness 5, so they managed to weather the Overwatch fire quite well. Didn't take any casualties from there, and they killed 6 of the tactical squad there, but the tactical squad passed the leadership test, and we stay locked in combat. So moving on to the next picture, just here a little summary of the turn. The Trigon there on the right hand side has assaulted into the Rune Priest unit and killed them all but the Rune Priest down the right hand side. And the young girls are in the centre of the picture there in combat with the 2 remaining tactical squad, I think, or 3. Can't really make out by the picture. The Vindicator in front of the Hive Tyrant is dead. The Duomalantai is still stood in the wreckage. There's lots of wrecked vehicles about. There's lots of craters about. The Rhino on the top of the picture there is still operational. It's only lost a single hull point. But it's still alive. It's not dead just yet. But this game's looking quite like this is going to turn his favour at this point in the game. So moving on to the next picture, we have here, this is Marine's turn 3. So he started his turn by the Librarian cast of Gate Infinity. Now we had a bit of a discussion about whether he could actually cast it when inside a Rhino. We couldn't find anywhere that it said he couldn't, so if that's wrong then please point it out, guys. But what he did is he cast Gate of Infinity and he deep struck out of his Rhino and he went onto the other side of that building that was next to him. We'll see that on the picture in just a second. So he basically at this point he said to me that he was trying to avoid being tabled. There was no way he could really win. He only had his Rune Priest left, his Librarian left, and a Rhino left, and a few tactical marines that were stuck in combat with the Young Gene Stealers. So at this point he said to me, we were kind of just playing for fun at this point. The competition was well and truly over, I think. But he said to me he was just trying to avoid being tabled, so he flew over to the other side of the building where I couldn't see him and couldn't get into range of him. So moving on to the next picture, we can see there the Trigon headbutted the Rune Priest into the ground, went at the same time. He couldn't wound me, toughness 6, he needed a 6 to wound, he couldn't get that 6. I elected to smash. I think I only inflicted 2 wounds, but it didn't matter. Strength 10, the instant killed him. So the Trigon just headbutted the Priest into the ground, killed him. And the Young Gene Stealers in the centre picture there finished off the tactical squad that was there. Moving on to the next picture, we can see here, if you get your bearings on this picture, this is where the librarian has jumped to. He's jumped out with his rhino, the other side of that building. He's out of line of sight of most of my army, well, all of my army, out of range, and he's also now claiming line breaker. If you look, he's just into my deployment zone there. So moving on to the next picture, this is start of Tyranids turn 4. The young Gene Stealers move across to try and engage that rhino. They've moved quite far there because I didn't show their consolidation and the movement phase. They rolled 5 for consolidation, and then I moved them 6. So Simon kindly just let me move them 11 inches all in one go to save time. And the Hive Tyrant decided to engage swoop mode, and he flew right up into that building, peering down over the librarian as if to say, you can't run away from me that easily. And Duramante again just stayed put. The Turbogon the Trigon off picture, just moved into the woods. There was nothing for him to do, no threats around anymore at this point, so he was just hanging around in the trees. So moving on to the next picture, we can see here. Sorry about the bad light in the picture, but you can see the librarian has turned to face the Hive Tyrant, who was burst through the top of that building there. He thought he'd got away, but the Hive Tyrant's giant wings propelling him, hunting down the librarian there, and he fires all 12 shots into the librarian, but he inflicts I think he inflicted 7 wounds, 8 wounds, but he managed to stay alive. He passed all but 1 armor save, and he has a single wound remaining, so he's not dead yet. This defiant librarian denying me Slay the Warlord, denying me a table in. So we move on to the next picture, and we can see here that the young Owls managed to charge that rhino. They needed about an 8 for the charge distance, but they had fleet of foot, so they managed to re-roll and they got in there. It was all good. And just as a word of note, the Duramante failed his psychic power again. He rolled another 11. I've cast it 3 times this game, and he's failed it twice. So it's good to know the psychic powers, work in your favour. And the score at this point of the game was 14-4 to the Tyranids. So moving on to the next picture, this will be the final picture of this battle report. Again, there was a few pictures throughout this thing that for some reason got corrupted, so again I apologise for that, guys. We can see here, in one last ditch effort, the librarian, who ironically he fired his bolt pistol into the Hive Tyrant and he hit him. He needed a 6 to hit, he rolled a 6. He needed a 6 to wound, but he rolled a 5. But he couldn't wound him. But the Hive Tyrant failed his grounding test and was grounded, so the librarian bravely charged into the Hive Tyrant in the building. He charges him with his force weapon, thinking he can claim a moral victory. The Hive Tyrant goes first, declares a challenge, smashed, and just slapped the librarian straight back out the window and swatted him like a fly. And the table in that Simon tried to avoid was delivered in the Marines' turn 4. The game was a bad sort of impression to get for the first battle report for a long time. So it was actually a lot closer than it seemed. His army just really wasn't set up to deal with the way mine was. The way I use my army, I'm not scared of Vindicators at all, because I don't care how big your pie plate is against a Trigon. You can only ever inflict a single wound from a Vindicator. So the 4 Vindicators really were kind of wasted on my army. But yeah, so the final score finished 18-4 to the Tyranids, but it was a tabling victory, so the score didn't matter in the end. I'm really enjoying playing with this army at the moment, guys. It's working really well. So that's the battle report. If you notice anything that we may have did wrong or anything like that, just feel free to comment. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this battle report, and there will be more to come. Okay, thank you.